Hi everyone, I'm Aurora from Susan's family. Today I'm bringing you a new piece, the Baroque Gild vest from Revisiting the World series. This vest is divided into the back body, left and right front bodies, left and right front bands, bottom edge of the back body and sewing, as well as the neckline and cuffs. First, knit the back body and left, right front bodies separately. Next, knit the left and right front bands and the bottom edge of the back body. Then sew the corresponding positions together. After that, knit the neckline and cuffs. There are two sizes available. The color work technique is the same for both sizes, but the stitch count and row count vary slightly. Therefore, the color work patterns at the beginning and ending of each row will differ. Just follow the chart for your specific size when knitting. It should be noted that, due to different hand tension among individuals, the size of the knitted piece may vary. Before starting the main project, you can make a gauge swatch to measure your hand tension. The method for making the gauge swatch is explained in a separate video tutorial. After measuring, adjust accordingly, based on the video instructions before proceeding with knitting. Let's start by learning the back body. It is divided into the body and the bust section. Knitting each area from bottom to top. Decrease stitches on both sides under the arms to create the armhole curve. Short rows at the shoulders form the sloping shoulder line. Bind off stitches at the neckline to shape the neck opening. First, let's take a look at the pattern chart. This chart is for teaching purposes only. Please follow your actual project as the reference. The chart appears in this grid format, where each square represents one stitch. Each square corresponds to one loop when crocheting. The chart provides the casting on method and the number of stitches. When counting the number of stitches per row, count the number of squares, then match it with the number of loops on your needle. Blank squares represent knit stitches. Squares of different colors correspond to different yarn colors. Arrows indicate the direction of crocheting. The right side is always read from right to left on the chart. The wrong side is read from left to right on the chart. When working on the wrong side, you need to crochet the opposite stitch pattern as shown in the chart. Now watch me demonstrate the specific technique. First, crochet the body. Use the long tail cast on method with your left hand. Work back and forth. Now learn how to cast on. Pay attention here. The entire garment is crocheted using two strands of yarn together, meaning two corresponding skeins of yarn. Take one yarn tail from each. Combine the two yarn tails into one strand for crocheting. For convenience of watching, all subsequent tutorials will use a single cotton yarn for demonstration. Colors are random. For specific yarn, color schemes and hook sizes, please refer to the detail page of our product and the paper instructions. The actual stitch count here is higher. Remember to use the corresponding circular needle size for casting on and crocheting. Below is a video demonstration of the long tail, cast on using the left hand. You can first refer to the video to learn the crocheting method, then follow the chart for crocheting. Now, let's show the long tail cast on technique. Before casting on, you need to leave a yarn tail of a certain length, usually about 3 times the length of the fabric piece. Refer to the pattern for specific length. Make a slip knot with the yarn tail. Pick up a straight needle or one end of a circular needle with your right hand. Insert into the loop. Gently tighten. This is the first stitch. Hold 2 strands of yarn with your left hand. Insert your thumb and index finger between these 2 strands. Note: the strand connected to the yarn ball should rest on your index finger. The long yarn tail should rest on your thumb. Straighten the yarn. Insert the needle from the bottom up into the loop on your thumb. Then pick up the strand from behind to front on your index finger. Draw the yarn through the loop on your thumb. Release the loop from your thumb. Gently tighten. This is the second stitch. Next, start the third stitch. Straighten the yarn. Insert the needle from the bottom up. Insert the hook into the loop on your thumb. Then pick up the strand from behind to front on your index finger. Draw the yarn through the loop on your thumb. Release the loop from your thumb. Gently tighten. The third stitch is complete. Continue to start the fourth stitch. First, insert the hook into the loop on your thumb. Then pick up the strand on your index finger. And draw it through the loop on your thumb. Release the loop from your thumb. Gently tighten. The fourth stitch is complete. Note: the yarn connecting to the skein always stays on your index finger. The reserved yarn stays on your thumb. Don't mix up the positions. Repeat this process. Continue casting on. Until you reach the required number of stitches. This is the long tail cast-on method. After completing the cast-on, we position the starting yarn tail on the left-hand side, as the right side of the fabric. For row 1, work on the wrong side using opposite stitches, meaning work purl stitches corresponding to each stitch. Starting from row 2, begin the stitch pattern. The pattern consists of squares in 2 colors. We refer to the color of the first row of squares as color 1. The other square color is called color 2. Pay attention to the color chart and follow the pattern chart. Below is a demonstration of stranded colorwork knitting. You can learn first. Then refer to the chart to knit the corresponding pattern. Stranded colorwork. Here I demonstrate with a swatch. First, knit a row on the right side. Read the chart from right to left. 2 colors are needed for knitting. Different colored squares in the chart correspond to different colored yarns. Need to refer to the chart. Use the corresponding color for knitting. First, join the yarn. We call the original yarn color 1. The new yarn is called color 2. Tie a knot with the 2 yarns. Then pull the knot to the base. Whenever you need to join yarn in the future, just follow this demonstration. Then follow the chart using the corresponding color yarn. Here I'll first demonstrate changing colors on every stitch. Here I'll first knit 1 stitch with color 1. Then hold 2 strands with one hand. Wrap the yarn with the pinky and ring finger respectively. Now each of these 2 fingers holds 1 strand. Continue knitting 1 stitch with color 2. Pick up the strand from underneath color 1. After changing colors and knitting 1 stitch, you can see there's a carried strand behind. Gently stretch the fabric. Make the carried strand level with the fabric. Don't pull the carried strand too tight to prevent the fabric from shrinking. Continue knitting 1 stitch with color 1. Here pay attention to carry color 1 above. Remember to gently stretch the fabric. Once done, continue picking up color 2 from underneath to knit 1 stitch. Note: when picking up strands, ensure the 2 strands don't twist. After each color change and knitting 1 stitch, gently stretch the fabric. Ensure the fabric stays flat, meaning don't pull this carried strand too tight. Continue knitting. Carry color 1 above. Pull color 2 from underneath. If it's inconvenient, using only the index finger, you can use the middle finger to pick up strands when working with color 2. After completing, check that color 1's carried strands are all above. Color 2's carried strands are all below. The texture looks neat and the yarn won't tangle. Actually, you don't need to separate above and below. Just keep the right side looking nice. This is the case when switching colors every stitch. Next, when working with the same yarn for fewer than 4 stitches, you can follow this demonstration. Pay attention to the stitch count for each color. By referring to the pattern, don't make mistakes. If it's more than 4 stitches, you need to carry the unused yarn. Let me demonstrate the carrying method for 5 consecutive stitches. First switch colors and work 3 stitches. Then use your index finger to pick up the other yarn. Pull it through from underneath. Continue working one knit stitch with this yarn. The other yarn has now been carried once. The carried yarn should be level with the fabric piece. Keep the fabric flat. Continue working one more stitch. This way, the 5 consecutive stitches are completed. This is the carrying method. After each time you carry the yarn, gently stretch the fabric. When carrying the yarn, carry it once every 3 stitches. I'll demonstrate carrying the yarn while working 7 consecutive stitches again. Pay attention to ensure the 2 strands don't twist when picking up strands each time. Here, pick up strands from underneath and work 3 stitches. Then from underneath the other yarn, pick up this strand. Work 3 more stitches. Gently stretch the fabric after each carry. Because of carrying the yarn, the 2 strands will twist together. When knitting later, remember to separate them. Continue carrying the yarn and work 1 stitch. This completes the 7 consecutive stitches. If there are more consecutive stitches later, carry the yarn a few times. The method is the same as before. You can see, here we carried the yarn twice. Next, follow this demonstration. Knit until the second to last stitch of this row. After finishing the second to last stitch, when working the last stitch, no matter how many stitches apart, always carry color 2. So that's the explanation for this right side row. Continue to knit the wrong side row. When working on the wrong side, always read the chart from left to right. And the chart represents the right side texture. On the wrong side, we should work a wrong side definition of the symbols. Therefore, this row should all be made in purl stitches. Right hand holds the yarn. Place the needle underneath both strands. Use the corresponding yarn to knit 1 purl stitch. gently stretch the fabric, making sure not to pull the piece too tight vertically. Then continue to pick up the corresponding yarn, and work purl stitches normally. When picking up strands to knit, ensure the two strands don't twist together. When working on the wrong side, after switching colors and completing each stitch, gently stretch the fabric immediately. Keep the piece lying flat. If the number of consecutive stitches doesn't exceed 4, switch colors using the method shown here. If it's more than 4 stitches, you'll still need to carry the yarn. The technique is the same as when working on the right side. Here, I'll demonstrate how to carry the yarn for 7 consecutive stitches. First, knit 3 stitches. Carry the yarn once, then knit 3 more. Carry the yarn again, and knit 1 stitch. That's how you complete 7 consecutive stitches, and carried the yarn twice. Next, refer to this demonstration. Follow the chart, knit until the second to last stitch of this row. Pay attention to keeping the yarn carrying layers consistent with the bottom. One yarn always stays on top while the other stays underneath. This creates a more beautiful texture. When you reach the corresponding position, you can also carry the other yarn when knitting the last stitch. That completes the explanation for this row on the wrong side. This is the method for stranded colorwork knitting. Next, I'll demonstrate how to count rows using a swatch. The fabric surface has columns of braid stitches. The foundation chain doesn't count as a row. Start counting from the top braid. 1, 2. The loops on the needle also count as 1 row. This indicates that 3 rows have been completed. This is how you count rows. Now everyone, follow the chart to finish the body section. During the crocheting process, you'll encounter situations where you need to join yarn and weave in ends. Here I provide a video demonstration for joining yarn and weaving in ends. When you encounter this situation later, just refer to this demonstration for handling it. If you run out of yarn during the crocheting process and need to join yarn, whether on the right side or wrong side, the method for joining yarn is identical. Here I'll demonstrate using a swatch. Take the new yarn, Tie a knot with the remaining strands. Then pull this knot to the base. Now the yarn is joined. Next, place the yarn tail on the wrong side of the fabric piece. Continue crocheting with the new yarn. The yarn tails on the back can be slightly tightened after the entire garment is finished. Then use a yarn needle to follow the texture on the wrong side. Pick up the surface segments to weave in the ends. Pay attention that the yarn tails shouldn't show on the surface. After weaving in for a certain distance, trim off the excess tail. This is the method for joining yarn and weaving in ends. Now the body section is complete. Next, on top of the body, continue crocheting the chest section. Work back and forth. The first few rows require underarm decreases. Form the curve of the armhole. Let me demonstrate the underarm decrease method. You can learn the technique first, then follow the pattern chart. Watch the demonstration. I'll explain using this small swatch. At the beginning of row 1, bind off several stitches consecutively. Refer to the chart for the exact stitch count. Each decrease symbol indicates how many stitches to decrease. I need to bind off 4 stitches consecutively here. Caret. If you need to bind off many stitches, we can separate them with stitch markers first. Begin binding off. The first stitch can be a slip stitch or a knit stitch. I'll do a slip stitch here. Then knit 1 stitch. Next, pass the previous stitch over the last stitch. That's how you decrease 1 stitch. Unless otherwise specified, on the right side, always bind off with knit stitches. Continue knitting 1 stitch. Bind off 1 stitch. Keep binding off while knitting the stitches together. Continue until there's only 1 loop left to the right of the stitch marker. I have 2 loops left here. Need to bind off 1 more stitch. Now there's only 1 loop left to the right of the stitch marker, which is the loop of the 4th stitch. We need to bind off this stitch as well. Therefore, knit 1 stitch and bind off. The very next stitch is the last bind off symbol, the adjacent stitch. Here we simply knit a knit stitch. Note: since stitch techniques may vary across different patterns, this stitch should be worked according to the chart. After finishing, bind off the fourth stitch as well. This way, the 4 stitches on the chart are bound off. Continue following the chart. Note: the next step should start from the second stitch next to the bind off symbol. Begin knitting from there. Before knitting, gently tighten this loop to prevent noticeable holes. There are no special patterns here, we'll knit all stitches. Finish this row. Now the first row is complete. Continue to row 2. We will work this row on the wrong side. Start by binding off 4 stitches in a row. First separate with a stitch marker. Begin binding off. You can slip the first stitch or purl it. Here, I'll slip the stitch. Then purl 1 stitch. Next, pass the previous stitch over the next stitch. This binds off 1 stitch. Continue purling 1 stitch. Bind off 1 stitch. When no special instructions are given, on the wrong side, purl while binding off. Continue purling while binding off. Keep going until only 1 stitch remains to the right of the stitch marker. Here, we'll bind off 1 more stitch. Now only 1 stitch remains to the right of the stitch marker, that's the loop of the 4th stitch. Bind off this stitch as well. So we need to purl 1 more stitch and bind off this next stitch, which is also the last stitch adjacent to this bind off symbol. On the wrong side, we purl this stitch. Bind off the 4th stitch. When actually crocheting, the specific stitch technique for this stitch should follow the chart. This way, the 4 stitches on the diagram are bound off. Continue following the chart. Note: the next step should start from this bind off symbol. Start from the second stitch next to it. Before crocheting, gently tighten this loop. To prevent noticeable holes. There's no special pattern here, we purl all stitches. Now the second row is finished. Next, bind off on the right side. The method is the same as the first row here. Bind off on the wrong side. The method is the same as the second row here. I'll demonstrate 2 more rows. Continue to work row 3. This row starts with casting off 2 stitches. First cast off 1 stitch. On the right side, knit to bind off. Then knit 1 stitch and bind off. Note: when binding off the last stitch, the stitch to be worked, the stitch pattern should be followed according to the chart. Sometimes the pattern is special. It may not necessarily be knit stitches here. Make sure not to make mistakes. The same applies to the wrong side. Now I've cast off 2 stitches. Continue working this row. Once completed, proceed to row 4. This row also starts with casting off 2 stitches. Cast off 1 stitch first. Purl the wrong side while binding off. Then purl 1 stitch and bind off. This way, 2 stitches are cast off. Continue working the rest of the row. Now I've completed row 4. If only 1 stitch needs to be decreased on each side, simply follow the same method as decreasing the first stitch earlier. This is the underarm decrease technique. Once the underarm decreases are done, continue referring to the chart. Work even for the required number of rows. Next, I'll continue explaining the following steps using the actual project. After finishing the rows worked even, the remaining part no longer needs textured stitches. The next row is worked on the wrong side with opposite stitches, that is, knit stitches. On the right side, it shows purl stitch texture. Pay attention to the end of the row, begin short rows on the right side. Decrease for the neckline at the same time. Leave the remaining loops unworked. Next, join yarn on the right side of the neck opening. Bind off at the neckline. Then begin short rows on the left side. Decrease for the neckline at the same time. Leave the remaining loops unworked. Specific method for short rows with held stitches. Methods for neckline decreases and shoulder bind-offs. Please refer to the demonstration in the video below. You can learn the method first, then follow the pattern chart. Short rows with held stitches. For example, on row 1 here, I short row 5 stitches on this side. That means knitting normally at the front. When 5 stitches remain, stop knitting. I finished row 1 here. Turn the work. Continue to row 2. Start row 2 with a double stitch. No matter what stitch technique it is, place the yarn above the right needle. Slip the first stitch. Then pull tight. If the next stitch is a purl, wrap the yarn around once. Bring it above before knitting. If the next stitch is a knit, just knit it directly. I'm working on the wrong side, purling. As you can see. Row 2 short rows 5 stitches on this side. Meaning leave the last 5 stitches unworked at the end. Once completed, turn the work. Continue to row 3. Start with a double stitch, which means slipping in purlwise manner. Pull tight the yarn. If the next stitch is a purl, wrap the yarn around again, bring it to the top and then knit. If the next stitch is a knit, just work it normally. Here I'm doing a knit stitch. Sometimes the number of short rows is identical for each section. Sometimes it varies due to the pattern or other reasons. The short row count differs. You need to follow the chart instructions for specifics. As you can see, at the end of row 3, we need to short row 3 stitches. Note: the double stitch counts as one stitch, meaning these 3 stitches will be left unworked. Now, row 3 is complete. Row 4 also requires short rowing 3 stitches at the end. Similarly, this double stitch is counted as one stitch. After each short row, the first stitch should be worked as a double stitch. Now, row 4 is finished. Sometimes, short rows are worked while shaping the neckline in the middle. You can follow the pattern chart for actual knitting. I'll continue knitting all the rows that require short rows in this chart. Now, I've completed it. After completing the short rows, the third to last row of this chart is done. Next, we need to decrease rows, specifically, row 9 here. First, decrease rows on this side. I'll knit all stitches as knit stitches here. When encountering a double stitch, simply knit it as one stitch. Decreasing rows on this side is completed. For the last row, we need to decrease rows on this side. I'll purl all stitches on the wrong side. When encountering a double stitch, simply purl it as one stitch. This is the short row knitting with held stitches. Let's learn a common neckline decrease technique, which is decreasing stitches by knitting purl stitches to create the required curve. Suppose this is the front body neckline. Therefore, this side is the left shoulder. This side is the right shoulder. Sometimes, shoulders need short rows. There are no short rows here. We're only explaining neckline decreases. First, we'll knit the left shoulder. This chart has fewer stitches, mainly explaining the method. First, knit row 1 of the neckline. Here, we first knit 13 knit stitches. If there are more stitches, you can first use stitch markers to separate these stitches before knitting. I've already finished row 1. The remaining loops are on hold. Next, knit row 2. Row 2 is worked on the wrong side. You can see, we need to decrease 3 stitches at the beginning of this row. If there are many consecutive decreases, we can first separate them with stitch markers. Begin decreasing. First knit 1 slip stitch, then 1 purl stitch. Next, pass the previous stitch over the following stitch. This decreases 1 stitch. Continue with 1 purl stitch. Then decrease another stitch. Unless otherwise specified, on the wrong side, purl while binding off. There's 1 stitch left to the right of the stitch marker, which is the loop of the 3rd stitch. We need to decrease this stitch. Therefore, knit 1 more stitch and bind off. The very next stitch is the stitch adjacent to the last decrease symbol. Here we simply purl the stitch. Note, since stitch patterns may vary for different motifs, refer to the pattern for this stitch. After finishing, decrease the 3rd stitch. This way, the 3 stitches on the chart are decreased. Continue following the chart. Note, the next stitch should be worked from the 2nd stitch, next to the decrease symbol. Before crocheting, gently tighten this loop to prevent noticeable holes. There's no special motif here. We'll purl all stitches. Now, the 2nd row is complete. Next, work row 3. Refer to the chart. Knit all stitches. I finished crocheting. Continue to row 4. At the beginning here, decrease 2 stitches only. Use the same method as row 1. First work 1 slip stitch. Then 1 purl stitch. Decrease 1 stitch. Continue with 1 purl stitch. Decrease 1 stitch. Gently tighten the loop. Then work all purl stitches, and complete row 5 as well. Now, I finished row 5. Continue to row 6. At the beginning of this row, decrease 1 stitch only. Use the same method as decreasing the first stitch in row 1. Once done, work all purl stitches. The remaining rows 7 and 9. All rows are worked in knit stitches. Row 8 is identical to row 6. Decrease 1 stitch at the beginning. Row 10 doesn't require any decreases. Work normal purl stitches. Now, I've completed these 10 rows. You should have 6 stitches remaining. This section is marked as tuck-in stitches, which means temporarily secure these loops. We can temporarily secure with waste yarn. Unless specified otherwise, leave about 15 centimeters of yarn tail, then trim it off. Pay attention to prevent loops from slipping. The left shoulder is done. Next, work on the right shoulder. Before crocheting, we need to decrease 9 stitches in the middle first. You can separate them with stitch markers. Pick up the new yarn. Make a slip knot with the yarn. Slightly tighten the loop. First, knit 2 stitches. Then bind off 1 stitch. Knit 1 more stitch. Bind off 1 stitch. Unless specified otherwise, on the right side it's bind off while knitting both sides together. Continue binding off the remaining stitches. Pay attention as well when binding off the last loop. The stitch you're working on is the first stitch to the left of this bind off symbol. Refer to the chart for the corresponding stitch technique. Here we continue knitting knit stitches and bind off. Once completed, finish the row starting from the second stitch. Then, on the wrong side, purl the entire second row. Now I've finished the second row. Continue to work row 3. Bind off 3 stitches at the beginning. First knit 1 slip stitch and 1 knit stitch. Then decrease 1 stitch. Continue binding off with knit stitches. Now, the 3 stitches are bound off. Continue finishing row 3 and complete row 4. Now I've finished row 4. Bind off 2 stitches at the beginning of row 5. The binding off method is identical to the first 2 stitches of row 3. For rows 7 and 9 later on, bind off 1 stitch at the beginning. The binding off method is the same as the first stitch in row 3. I'll continue to finish the remaining section of the right shoulder. Now I've completed the right shoulder. There should be 6 stitches left here, and temporarily secure these 6 stitches. So, this is how to decrease for this neckline. With that, the back body knitting is complete. Next, let's learn how to knit the right front. It's divided into the body, chest piece and shoulder neck. First, let's look at the body. Use the long tail cast on method with your right hand. Work back and forth. The new stitch technique used is knit stitch increase on the right. Then, follow the pattern for knitting. Now, let's show. First, do the long tail cast on. Before casting on, leave a yarn tail of a certain length, usually about 3 times the length of the piece. Refer to the chart for the exact length. Make a slip knot with the yarn tail. Pick up a straight needle with your left hand, or one end of a circular needle. Insert into the loop. Gently tighten. This is the first stitch. Hold 2 strands of yarn with your right hand. Insert your thumb and index finger between these 2 strands. Note: the strand connected to the yarn ball should be on your index finger. The reserved long yarn tail should be on your thumb. Straighten the yarn. Insert the needle upwards through the loop on your thumb. Pick up the strand on your index finger from behind to front. Pull the yarn through the loop on your thumb. Release the yarn on your thumb. Gently tighten. This is the second stitch. Next, start the third stitch. Straighten the yarn. Insert the needle upwards through the loop on your thumb. Then pick up the strand on your index finger from behind to front. Pull the yarn through the loop on your thumb. Release the yarn on your thumb. Gently tighten. The third stitch is done. Continue to start the fourth stitch. First, insert the hook into the loop on your thumb. Then pick up the strand on your index finger and pull it through the loop on your thumb. Release the yarn on your thumb. Gently tighten. The fourth stitch is done. Note: the yarn connecting to the skein always stays on your index finger. The reserved yarn stays on your thumb. Don't mix them up. Repeat this process. Continue casting on. Until you reach the required number of stitches. This is the long tail cast on method. Once casting on is complete, we'll consider the yarn tail on the right side as the right side of the piece. The right side of the piece. Work even on the first row. Start the pattern on the second row. Short rows with increases are needed on the right side of the piece. After finishing all the cast-on stitches, continue increasing on the right side of the piece. Work even after reaching the required number of stitches. When increasing, you'll encounter the new stitch technique. Knit increase on the right. Note: this knit increase on the right is worked on the wrong side of the piece. You'll need to work the opposite stitch technique, which is purl increase on the left. For specific short row increases, the method for purl increase on the left, please refer to the video demonstration below. You can learn the technique first, then follow the chart. Short row increases. For example, in this chart, short rows begin from the second row. At the end, leave the total stitches needed for short rows on this side unworked. I've already completed the second row. Start the third row with a double stitch. The double stitch matches the previous section here. Then leave the total stitches needed for short rows on this side unworked. On the fourth row, first work to the double stitch position. Then knit additional corresponding stitches. In my case, I'm knitting 5 extra stitches. For each subsequent row toward the short row position, you'll need to knit additional corresponding stitches at the end. After working the double stitch position, knit additional corresponding stitches. Repeat this process. Complete these 11 rows. After finishing the double stitch position on the last row, knit 4 extra stitches, perfectly using up all the loops. Purl stitch left increase. First work this loop as 1 purl stitch. Then pick up the second loop underneath this loop. Work 1 purl stitch. This is the increased stitch. Purl stitch left increase completed. After completing the body section, work the chest piece and shoulder neck parts. Method similar to the back piece. Continue working even on the right side of the chest piece fabric. Decrease stitches underarm on the left side, then continue working even. After finishing the chest piece, proceed to work the shoulder neck. Decrease stitches for the neckline on the right side, then work the short rows for the held stitches. After completion, join with the corresponding shoulder of the back piece and bind off. Below is the method for joining and binding off. You can learn it first, then follow the chart to crochet. Now, let's show. The first method is stitch-to-stitch joining. This is a commonly used joining method when all are yarn loops. A commonly used joining method. Join the pieces together by binding off. Usually used to join the shoulders of the front and back bodies. Both fabric pieces are in yarn loop state. We take the stockinette side as the right side. Joining and binding off is usually done on the wrong side of the piece. That means placing the two pieces with right sides together. Usually one of the pieces is worked without cutting the yarn. This yarn can be on either piece. Place the side with held stitches on the right. When joining and binding off, it's usually done by knitting and binding off simultaneously. That means drawing through loops from both fabric pieces at the same time. Knit stitch to bind off with a slip stitch. The stitch counts of both pieces are usually identical. Just work evenly and bind off corresponding stitches. If one piece has more stitches, you'll need to decrease while binding off on the side with more stitches. assuming this piece has more stitches. You can insert into 2 loops at once. Then continue inserting into 1 loop. Knit stitch to bind off. If the back piece has more stitches, insert into 2 loops at the back simultaneously. Knit stitch to bind off. In my case, both pieces have identical stitch counts, so I'll continue binding them off completely. Just tie a knot with the yarn tail, and tuck it in. This is the effect after joining, and binding off. That completes the explanation for the right front piece. Next, let's learn how to knit the left front piece. It's divided into the body, chest piece and shoulder neck section. Use the long tail cast on method with your left hand. Work back and forth. First, let's look at the body. Note that the first row is the wrong side of the piece. Then, starting from the left side of the piece, work short rows for increasing stitches. This direction is opposite to the right front piece. After finishing all the stitches in the cast-on section, continue increasing stitches on the left side of the piece. Once you've increased to the required number of stitches, work even. When increasing, you'll encounter the new stitch technique, knit stitch left side increase. For this short row increasing, refer to the video demonstration shown in the right front piece. Work accordingly. The method for knit stitch left side increase is demonstrated in the video below. You can learn the technique first, then refer to the chart for knitting. Continue learning the knit stitch left side increase. Normally, there's a braid below the loop. First, pick up this loop and work 1 knit stitch. Then find the second braid below the loop. Insert the left needle from left to right into the left strand of this braid. Then work 1 knit stitch. This stitch on the left side is the increased stitch. That's how the knit stitch left side increase is completed. I'll demonstrate it again. First work 1 knit stitch. Then use the left needle to pick up the left strand of the second braid below. Then work 1 more knit stitch. After completing the body section, the remaining chest piece and shoulder neck section are decreased at the underarm on the right side of the fabric. Decrease stitches at the left neckline. Finally, perform short rows for the shoulders. Once done, then join and bind off the shoulders with the corresponding part of the back body. The crochet method has been explained before. The direction is symmetrical to the right front piece. Please refer to the previous demonstration and instructions. Just complete this section. Next, learn about the left and right front bands and the bottom edge of the back body. The left and right front bands are worked separately on the left and right front pieces, on the neckline side, the chest piece and the sides of the body, and at the cast-on edge. You'll need to increase stitches during the crocheting process. The bottom edge of the back body is worked even at the cast-on edge. Here, I'll demonstrate the method using the right front band as an example. For the left front band and bottom edge, follow the demonstration here. Refer to the chart. The new stitch technique used is the twisted increase. Now, let's show. This is the sample swatch for the right front piece, with the cast-on edge facing up. First, count the number of stitches, without curve from left to right at the cast-on edge. You can also mark according to the colorwork pattern in the chart. Here, we use a stitch marker to mark. If you don't have a stitch marker, you can use a paperclip or safety pin instead. Then find the last increase point on the right side of the body. Mark it in the nearby position. After marking, take a look. Here, we pick up stitches counterclockwise from the cast-on, all the way to the direction of the last row of the chest piece. The position marked by the stitch marker divides this edge into 3 sections. Pick up stitches according to the number of stitches needed for each section. Start picking up stitches from the cast-on point here. Take out the required yarn. Make a slip knot. Use a circular needle at the cast-on edge. Pick up 2 strands of yarn to pull the yarn through. This is the first stitch. Continue picking up stitches to the left. Here you can see the long tail cast-on creates a braid texture. Each braid corresponds to 1 stitch of the cast-on. Continue picking up each braid to the left. Since the number of stitches picked up here will be less than the stitch count marked for this section, so skip 1 stitch afterward. Continue picking up stitches at the next braid. Skip stitches evenly like this. Keep picking up until you reach the stitch marker position. After completing, you can remove this stitch marker. Hang it on the right-hand needle to mark the middle section. If the stitch marker is too large for convenient knitting, you can also take another strand of yarn to make a slip knot. Trim the excess yarn tail. Use this loop as a marker ring. Use it as a substitute stitch marker on the right-hand needle. The left side is the starting chain and the edge of the fabric piece. At the beginning chain, continue picking up stitches as demonstrated earlier. For the edge, pick up 2 strands along the side. Pay attention to picking up stitches evenly here. In practice, you can also place several more stitch markers evenly in this section. Then distribute an approximately equal number of stitches across the divided segments. While picking up, remember to check the stitch count regularly. When reaching the last stitch marker position, Remove the stitch marker. Place it on the right-hand needle. Here I continue using the stitch marker ring. The remaining part afterward is all the edge of the fabric piece. You can also mark sections with stitch markers. Then pick up 2 strands evenly along the edge. Remember to check the stitch count while picking up. This completes the picking up row. Next, work row 1. Turn the work and knit 1 by 1 accordingly. Pay attention, when you reach the stitch marker ring position, simply pick up the stitch marker ring onto the right-hand needle. Continue knitting straight to the end of this row. At this point, row 1 is completed. For the remaining rows on the right front band afterward, just work back and forth with the corresponding stitch pattern. What needs to be mindful of is, the middle section that has been marked, requires increasing stitches. When increasing stitches, you'll encounter a twisted new stitch technique. After completing the required number of rows, perform a bind off. Note that for the bind off, you need to change needles first before knitting. When knitting the section with increases, remember to keep the loops on your hook loose, to ensure the finished piece lies flat. The method for the twisted increase, please refer to the demonstration video below. You can learn the technique first, then follow the pattern chart. Now I'll demonstrate the twisted knit stitch increase using this swatch. Notice there's a carried yarn strand between these 2 stitches. Pick up the carried yarn strand from front to back with the left needle. Insert the right needle into the strand behind. Knit 1 stitch. That's how you complete the twisted knit stitch increase. Let me demonstrate once more. Pick up the carried yarn strand in the middle with the left needle. Insert the right needle into the strand behind. Knit 1 stitch. Another twisted knit stitch increase is done. That completes the right front band technique. Now let's look at the left front band. Start from the last row of the left front chest panel. Pick up stitches counterclockwise all the way to the cast on edge. Remember to follow the same picking up method as the right front band. Mark the corresponding positions before picking up stitches, then work back and forth in the stitch pattern. Pay attention, you need to increase stitches in this middle section. Use the same increase method. After completing the required rows, switch needles and bind off with purl stitches. When picking up stitches along the bottom edge of the back body, pay attention. Pick up stitches one by one corresponding to the cast-on edge. Check the stitch count after picking up. Being short 1 or 2 stitches is okay. Then work back and forth in the corresponding stitch pattern. After completion, you don't need to switch needles. Bind off directly with purl stitches. That completes the left front band and bottom edge of the back body. After finishing, sew together the side seams of the left and right front panels with the back body, as well as the side edges of the front bands and bottom edges below. Sew them together. Use the row-to-row method for sewing. You can refer to the chart or choose based on your preference. Select the corresponding color yarn for sewing. Below is a video demonstration of the sewing technique. Everyone can learn first. Then sew both sides of the front and back bodies together. Now, let's sew. Next, learn the row-to-row connection. We usually use the seamless sewing method. When sewing, pick up the horizontal strands along the edges. Let's first get familiar with the fabric piece. First, find the first stitch on the edge. The first stitch on the edge usually has 4 situations. The first is slip stitch, which means picking up without knitting along the texture, forming a large braid. The second is also slip stitch, just when slip stitching. It's opposite to the texture below, forming this kind of knot. The third is knitting every row. Usually knit stitch on the right side, purl stitch on the wrong side, forming this kind of small braid. The fourth is also knitting every row. Usually knit stitch on both right and wrong sides, forming rib stitch. The left side of the first stitch is the second stitch. For example, this fabric piece. From this side, the second stitch shows knit texture. From the other side, the second stitch shows purl texture. Whether the second stitch shows knit texture or purl texture, you can notice the loops are always facing forward. These upside down loops. The horizontal strand below. Is the horizontal strand between 2 stitches? It's the same on this side. This is the upside down loop. This one is the horizontal strand between 2 stitches. It's the same when working seed stitch on the edge. This is the second stitch. This column is the second stitch. Right side loops. Between these 2 stitches. The upside down loops. This single strand of yarn is the horizontal strand between 2 stitches. The edge is worked in slip stitch. Similarly, between these 2 stitches, there are also horizontal strands. regardless of the type. One strand of carried yarn roughly corresponds to one row. Before sewing, you can first weave in the yarn tails on the wrong side for a few stitches, and tie a knot to secure them. I won't weave them in here. Seamless sewing means alternately picking up the horizontal strands along the edges of these two fabric pieces each time, picking up the horizontal strands along the edges for 2 stitches, and sewing them together. Pick up 1-2 strands each time. Pay attention, if the row counts of the 2 fabric pieces are the same, you can sew them together correspondingly, meaning you pick up the same amount of strands each time. Inserting the needle where you last pulled out. To pick up the horizontal strands. Here, I pick up 1 strand each time. After sewing a few stitches, gently tighten it slightly. If the row counts of the 2 fabric pieces are different, but to sew the fabric pieces together evenly, you can pick up extra strands on the side with more rows, appropriately. For example, generally pick 1 strand each time. On the side with more rows, at certain positions, pick 2 strands. Here the row counts of the 2 fabric pieces are the same. I'll continue sewing until finished. This is the method for seamless sewing between rows. Next, let's learn about neckline and cuffs. The neckline is on the right front band. Right front, back body, left front and left front band. Pick up stitches along the neckline formed by these parts, then work back and forth. No new stitch techniques are used. Below is a video demonstration showing how to pick up stitches for a neckline in flat knitting. You can learn the method first, then follow the pattern chart. With the right side of the garment facing you, collar up, starting from the front band on the right front piece. Pick up stitches along this side edge. Make a slip knot with the yarn tail. Insert the hook into 1-2 strands of the front band side edge. Pick up the knotted loop. Adjust the loop size. Continue picking up stitches along the front band side edge. Refer to the chart for the exact stitch count. Once completed, reach the bind-off position on the right front piece. Pick up the braid for bind-off. Refer to the chart for the exact stitch count. Then continue picking up the side edge of the right front piece. Next, pick up the loops for bind-off on the back body. Continue following this method. Pick up the remaining sections until finishing the front band side edge on the left front piece. Pay attention to adjusting the stitch count while picking up stitches. Slightly off by 1 or 2 stitches is fine. This completes the picking up of stitches. That concludes the neckline knitting. Now let's look at the cuffs. Pick up stitches along the armholes formed after sewing. Then work in the round. No new stitch techniques are used. Below is a video demonstration for picking up stitches around the armhole and the first round. You can learn the method first, then follow the chart to knit. First, pick up stitches at the armhole position. Here I'll demonstrate using a swatch. Take a straight needle. You can see there are chain spaces between every 2 stitches along the fabric edge. 1 row corresponds to 1 space. Start picking up spaces from one side of the underarm seam. Refer to the chart for the specific stitch pattern. Evenly pick up the required number of stitches. Pay attention to start close to the sewing position to prevent large gaps from forming under the arm. After picking up about 1/3, take a second straight needle to pick up stitches. Pay attention to tighten at the junction. Once completed, place a stitch marker below the 3rd straight needle. Mark with a stitch marker. Finish the loops on this needle. This indicates the end of a full round. The first and last stitches are on both sides of the underarm position. This completes the picking up process. Continue to knit the first round. Take a fourth needle to work the corresponding stitch pattern in the round. The stitch pattern here is random for the swatch. Please refer to the chart for details. At the junction of the two straight needles, tighten the first stitch as much as possible. This prevents large gaps in the fabric. Finish the loops on the needle corresponding to the stitch marker. The first round of the sleeve body is complete. For the remaining rounds, continue knitting following the demonstration of the first round. After finishing off, leave a yarn tail. Join the beginning and ending of the bind off, using any method to sew together. To make the edge flat here, knit the other cuff using the same method. This completes the explanation for the cuffs. Up to this point, the entire vest making process is fully explained. If you have any unclear parts during the crocheting process, don't hesitate to join our Facebook group to get supports. Susan's Family, supporting your handwork experience, sharing the joy of life. Thank you for watching. See you in the next episode.